Okay, so what if the one piece of medical advice that's been standard for years wasn't just a little off, but was actually holding people back? Today, we're diving into a fascinating study that flips the script on how we manage a serious, rare disease. I mean, that's a huge question, right? And it's really at the core of what we're talking about today. For so long, the advice for people with certain genetic conditions has basically been, don't push it, limit your physical activity. But what if that well-meaning advice was actually part of the problem? To really get why this study is such a game changer, first we need to understand the day-to-day reality for the kids living with these conditions. So we're mostly talking about a condition called Marfan Syndrome, or MFS. It's pretty rare, and it affects the body's connective tissue, which is kind of like the glue that holds all your cells and organs together. And that can cause some really serious problems, especially with the heart, skeleton, and eyes. But the official diagnosis, that's just one part of the story. The toughest challenges are often the ones you can't see on a medical chart. And this chart, wow, it really lays it all out. Researchers compared kids with Marfan syndrome to their healthy peers, and the results are pretty stark. Just look at the difference between the gray bars and the white bars. Across the board, physically, socially, even at school, their quality of life is just plain lower. This thing affects everything.
And get this, 96%. At the start of the study we're digging into, almost every single participant was considered physically deconditioned. That's a staggering number.
This quote from the study just hits the nail on the head. We're not talking about the inability to be a pro athlete here. We're talking about a level of fatigue and low stamina that gets in the way of just living your life. The simplest daily activities can feel like climbing a mountain. So, all of this brings us to this central conflict, what I'm calling the exercise paradox. And for a long time, the restrictions made sense, right? A major risk with Marfan syndrome is that the aorta, the body's main artery, can get weak and bulge. So the thinking was, hey, let's not push it. Strenuous exercise could put too much pressure on the heart and aorta. The advice was clear, avoid it. But then a group of researchers came along and asked a really bold question. They started wondering, could this lack of activity actually be making the fatigue and the low quality of life worse? What if, and this is the key, what if a personalized and totally safe program could actually be the answer? So how in the world do you test a brave idea like that? Well, you design a really smart clinical trial. What they came up with was this brilliant 6-month program. First, they got a baseline for every kid to know their exact limits. Then, they built a custom plan for each of them to do at home, using a stationary bike and some resistance bands. The kids did 3 sessions a week with regular coaching calls to make sure everything was on track and, most importantly, safe. So, just to give you the specifics, this was a formal clinical trial. They enrolled 28 kids aged 7 to 18 with Marfan syndrome or a similar condition. In the end, 19 of them completed the entire 6-month program. And this is where the story gets really good. The results, well, they weren't just a little positive. They were kind of mind-blowing. Okay, let's look at this chart. That term, ventilatory anaerobic threshold, sounds super technical, but here's all you need to know. Think of it as the point where your body switches from, I could do this all day, to, okay, now this is hard work. A higher threshold means more endurance. And look at that line go up from month 0 to month 6. It's a clear, significant jump. These kids built real, measurable stamina. And here's what that actually means for these kids' lives. Those physical improvements weren't just numbers on a chart. They translated directly into a better life. You can see the scores for quality of life went up, especially in physical health and their ability to socialize. The science had a direct, powerful human impact. But what about the big, scary question, the risk? This was the #1 concern, right? Well, this chart is the answer. It's the mic drop. It tracks the size of the aorta over the entire study, and you can see nothing. No negative changes. This proves the program wasn't just effective, it was safe. It tackled that biggest fear head-on and won. And check this out, another really concrete result. By the end of the study, on average, the kids could walk an extra 41 meters in a 6-minute test. Now, that may not sound like a huge distance, but in terms of what you can do in your daily life, that is a massive improvement. So, where do we go from here? What does this all mean? Well, this study basically carves out a whole new path forward.
Here's the bottom line. For the very first time, we have solid scientific proof that a personalized exercise program can be a powerful therapy for these kids. And it's not a pill or a surgery. It's an approach that can completely change how these conditions are managed, starting from childhood.
So, let's just quickly recap the big takeaways here. 1. Tailored exercise is safe. 2. It really works boosting physical endurance. 3. It makes a huge difference in their quality of life. And maybe the most important part, it empowers these kids and helps them build healthy habits that could last a lifetime. And that leaves us with one last, really big idea to chew on. This study was about more than just exercise. It was about delivering personalized, safe, and effective therapy right to a patient's own home. So you have to wonder, could this model be the future for how we manage not just this one condition, but all kinds of other rare diseases?